Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala thumma amma ba'd. So today, inshallah, we will have two chapters. We will finish two chapters. And it seems that we will be able to finish the whole book of Zakat probably within 3 weeks. So 3 more weeks. We have Zakat of merchandise next, and then Zakat of Zakat al-Fitr afterwards, and then how to pay Zakat and the sort of recipients of Zakat, legitimate recipients, those who could receive Zakat and those who may not receive Zakat, and that will be it. So it may be 3 or 4 more weeks, inshallah, and we will finish Zakah, and then, inshallah, we will start Fiqh of financial transactions. Fiqh of financial transactions. Some people call it Fiqh of commerce. Anyway, it's Fiqh al-Muamalat al-Maliyya. Bab Zakat al-Athman. The Imam ibn Qudamah rahimahullah said Bab Zakat al-Athman, chapter on the Zakat of currency. And as I said, we will cover 2 chapters, the Zakat of currency and the Zakat of debts. Zakat of debts as far as the creditors are concerned and as far as the debtors are concerned. So if you owe somebody money or if you owed money by somebody, this money, who's going to pay the Zakat for it? Keep in mind, the fuqaha are always looking to get the zakat out of every money that's out there because they feel that this is the right of the poor, حقوق الفقراء. So they want to get money out of it. Who's going to pay for it? The creditor or the debtor, and in what circumstances, etc. So then part of it also will be about sadaq or mahr or dowry. Although I don't like the word dowry because it does have some sort of negative connotations. The word sadaq has beautiful connotations. It's about like a proof of sincerity, a proof of commitment, a proof of sort of truthfulness in that pursuit, in pursuing marriage or proposing to someone. So sadaq, we'll call it sadaq. So that will be, inshallah, our zakat of debts. This is the second segment of this lecture. The first segment of this lecture will be about the zakat of currency. And zakat of currency, it's called zakat al-athman. What is athman? That's plural of thaman. What is thaman? Means price. It's whatever you pay as a price for other commodities. Sort of standardized prices for different commodities. That used to be in the past gold and silver. Nowadays we use cash. Therefore, should cash be as a substitute for gold and silver, even if it is not tied to a gold reserve anymore, but should cash still be considered currency? Not only in the abwab of zakat or the chapters of zakat, but also abwab al-riba or the chapters of riba. Should we consider cash like gold and silver and apply the rules of gold and silver to cash? Yes or no? Yes, that's good. Well, some people said no, but the vast majority of scholars said yes. And then we need to say yes because otherwise we would have sort of decimated the fiqh in those 2 major areas. Zakat and riba, because no one is using gold and silver as currency anymore, and people are only using cash. So, I'll give you $200. I'll tell you, in 1 year, bring me back 300, and that would be fine because the rulings of cash are different from the rulings of gold and silver, and riba does not apply here. Then, so what is the riba about anymore? So it will be sort of devastating to fiqh in these particular areas if we don't consider cash to be like gold and silver, substitute for gold and silver. Therefore, should take the rulings of gold and silver. Certainly, you're not going to say that they will take all the rulings of gold and silver, because there will be some rulings for gold and silver that will not apply to cash, right? So it's halal to wear gold for women, not halal to wear gold for men and stuff. These things will not apply to cash. But as far as we're concerned with gold and silver as prices for things, for commodities, athman, then cash should take all of their rulings. As Sheikh here said, currency, he's talking about al-athman, zakat al-athman, zakat of currency. He said, وَهِيَ نَوْعَانِ, so currency. There are two different types of currency or kinds of currency, gold and silver, ذهب وفضة. ولا زكاة في الفضة حتى تبلغ 200 درهم فيجب فيها 5 دراهم. So there is no zakat in fidda until it reaches, there's no zakat in silver until it reaches 200 dirhams. 200 dirhams would be 595 grams of silver. 595 grams of silver is 200 dirhams. And then he said in 200 dirhams, the zakat will be what? 5 dirhams. And that's all consensus. So in the zakat is 5 out of 200 is 2.5%. 5 out of 200 is 2.5%. So the zakat is 2.5%. And then he said, وَلَا فِي الذَّهَبِ حَتَّى يَبْلُغَ 20 مثقالا فَيَجِبُ فِيهِ نِصْفُ مثقال. And there is no zakat in gold or on gold until it reaches 20 mithqals, and its zakat is half a mithqal, still 2.5%, because half out of 20 is 2.5%. 20 mithqals of gold, 20 dinars, would be what? Would be 85 grams. 85 grams. And that is basically an estimate, that we try to get as close as possible. There will be some disagreements, there will be some differences, but we are taking the basically mainstream sort of predominant position here in translating their measures to ours. So the translation certainly may result in some degree of error, but we are trying to be safe and to take a moderate position that is also on the safer side. So 595 grams of silver is your nisab, which means your zakat threshold, which means your zakatable minimum, below which you are not required to pay zakat. Now, what if you have, let us say, it's 595 grams of silver. So you have and 85 grams of gold. So you have, divide this by 5. 595, 119. So you have 119 grams of silver. Divide this by 5, and it will be 17. Multiply 17 by 4, and it will be 68. And you have 68 grams of gold. You have 119 grams of silver, you have 68 grams of gold. And that's it, you don't have anything else. Do you have to pay zakat? Yes. Yes, there are two reports in the madhab anyway. You have to pay zakat is one report, and that seems to be the stronger report. And you don't have to pay zakat is the other report that is like the Shafi'i position. But the stronger position in the madhab chosen by Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah is that you have to pay zakat. Why? Because 119 is 1/5 of your nisab of silver, and 68 is 4/5 of your nisab of gold. So if you have 4/5 of the nisab in gold and 1/5 of the nisab in silver, combine them, you have the nisab. So this is not about value, this is about ajza, which are portions. So if you have half of the nisab of silver and half of the nisab of gold, you have one nisab. If you have 3/4 of the nisab of gold and 1/4 of the nisab of fidda, you have one nisab. Therefore, your zakah will be binding on you. As we said before, cash is a substitute for gold and silver. Is cash then can you add cash then to gold and silver to complete the nisab? Yes. You add cash to complete the nisab. So if you have, well, what is the nisab of cash? How do we determine the nisab of cash? As we said before, when we use gold or silver, some of the scholars, in the Hanbali madhab, whichever one. But contemporary scholars, majami' al-fiqhiyya, fiqh assemblies, fiqh academies, etc., contemporary scholars. And you do want to draw on the wisdom of contemporary scholars because they have, do not belittle contemporary scholars, because this is like a sort of a general attitude that Muslims nowadays have, and it has to do with arrogance. At the end of the day, it's about arrogance. It's about, not wanting any of your contemporaries to be like you, to be more than you. So you only submit to the authority of al-Bukhari, because he was like 1,200 years ago. You don't feel that urge to compete with al-Bukhari, because he probably lost hope that you could ever compete with him, and he's not alive anymore, so you don't feel like it doesn't cause you any pain that he surpassed you, because he's not alive anymore. But generally that attitude. So don't belittle contemporary scholars. Yes, certainly we have the concept of fadl ilm al-salaf ala al-khalaf, the sort of the precedence of the salaf and their the superiority of the knowledge of the righteous predecessors and and ancestors, and certainly the closer it gets to the Prophet ﷺ, the better it is. All these concepts are valid concepts, but it does not mean that the ummah will dry out. The ummah does not dry out. Anyway, so going back to the contemporary scholars on the issue of the nisab, they said the gold standard is the gold standard. So gold is the standard. And in this case, the nisab of cash will be determined according to the value of gold. So 85 grams of 24 karat gold, we did this calculation before, and someone came up with a number. It was about 3,000 and change, a little bit more than 3,000. So let's say 3,000, just for the sake of simplicity here and practicality, 3,000. So you have, what is 17 times 3? Will be 51, right? 51. So you don't have 68, but you have 51 grams of gold, which means you have 3/5 of the nisab of gold, and then 3,000 is the nisab for cash. You have 600. Oh, Jazakallah khair, sure. $600. So that is 1/5 of your nisab in cash. So you have 3/5 of the nisab of gold, 1/5 of the nisab of silver, 1/5 of the nisab of cash. You have the nisab. You add them up, you have the nisab, you need to pay your zakat. Is this all clear? Clear. Then the Sheikh said, فَإِنْ كَانَ فِيهِمَا غِشٌ. This is something that you will not have to worry about, but anyway. فإن كان فيهما غش فلا زكاة فيهما حتى يبلغ قدر الذهب والفضة نصابا فإن شك في ذلك خير بين الإخراج وبين سبكهما ليعلم قدر ذلك. And if there is if there's any doubt about its purity, there are two options to choose from: to pay the zakat on the amount as it is, or to first purify it by casting in order to determine the actual amount. So you have gold and you're not quite sure if it is, how pure it is, and so on. So it'll tell you, you either weigh the whole thing, or if you want to figure it out, just go, and cast it and see what comes out of it, the amount of gold that comes out of it. But also, if you're certain that what you have is 18 karat gold, then you will figure out what this is like in 24 carats. So you'll figure out. But because the zakat is on the 24 karat gold, it's 85 grams of the 24 karat gold. Then the Sheikh said, ولا زكاة في الحلي المباح المعد للاستعمال والعارية. There is no zakat on permissible jewelry that is prepared for personal use or lending. There is no zakat on permissible jewelry that is prepared for permissible use or lending. And that is when there is a big controversy between the scholars, and we have, the Hanafis and the Zahiris said there is zakat on jewelry permissible for use. And the Maliki, Shafi'is, and Hanbalis said there is no zakat on jewelry that is for use. So your silver jewelry as a man and your gold and silver jewelry, keep in mind, if the jewelry is not permissible, he said permissible, that have a permissible use. If you have gold and silver utensils, that is not permissible. It means you have to pay zakat on that, because that is considered currency, because this cannot be usable because its use is haram to begin with. You can't really use gold and silver utensils. Gold fork, silver dishes and gold. So these are not halal to use to begin with. Therefore, you can't say that this is a usable item, usable property. It's not usable, it's not halal to use. So utensils are out of the question. Gold for men is out of the question as well. If you have gold jewelry as a man, it is zakatable by consensus also. Why? Because it's not usable property. Because you can't use it to begin with. It's not halal for you to use it to begin with. But silver jewelry for men, gold and silver jewelry for women, are they zakatable? Let's say a woman has 105 grams of gold that she uses. Is this zakatable? Let's give this a little bit of time to discuss. So, why did Imam Abu Hanifa say that it is zakatable? And why did the Zahiris concur with Imam Abu Hanifa on these issues? The literalists, Zahiris, they translate Zahiris as literalists, although it may be condescending. So we could say textualist better than literalist. Textualists. Although you say textualists about the Hanbalis as well, but it's a long story. Anyway, but why did Imam Abu Hanifa say, despite that Imam Abu Hanifa is usually the person who holds on to ongoing principle versus the singular reports, here he switched seats with the Jumhur. So here the Jumhur, basically held on to the ongoing principle that usable property is not zakatable, and Imam Abu Hanifa switched with them, and he took the side of the singular individual reports that indicate that jewelry is zakatable, gold and silver jewelry. We're not talking about diamonds, we're not talking about rubies, we're not talking about this stuff, we're talking about gold and silver only. Okay, so Imam Abu Hanifa said, first, gold and silver are zakatable. The default for gold and silver is that they are zakatable. There is no, why are you making a distinction between gold and silver that are used as currency and gold and silver that are used as jewelry? where is that distinction? How are you making that distinction? The Jumhur will say we're making that distinction because the ongoing principle that you agree with us on is that usable property is not zakatable. ليس على المسلم في عبده ولا فرسه زكاة. So a Muslim is not obliged to pay zakat on his sort of horses, for instance, or his slaves. So the Prophet ﷺ said this, and we agree with you. We all extrapolated from this that usable property is not zakatable. So Imam Hanifa would say, but you have several reports here in which the Prophet ﷺ indicated that they are zakatable. He would mention, one of those reports. I'll mention just one report, but there are 3 or 4 reports in this regard that corroborate each other. But mentioning one of them, the Prophet ﷺ one day entered upon Aisha radiallahu anha. She said, دخل علي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وفي يدي فتخات من ورق فقال ما هذا يا عائشة قلت صنعتهن أتزين لك يا رسول الله قال أتؤدين زكاتهن قلت لا قال فهو حسبك من النار. So the Prophet ﷺ entered upon me, and I had, not fatakhat means big rings. Big rings. I had in my hand, or on my hand, I had big rings of silver, and the Prophet ﷺ said, what is this, Aisha? And I said, I made them, I had them made, O Messenger of Allah, to beautify myself, to adorn myself for you. Which is a concept that, given the sort of the feminist environment, would be sort of not a valid concept. No, but certainly it is a valid concept. No, صنعتهن أتزين لك يا رسول الله. I had them made so that I would adorn, beautify myself for you, O Messenger of Allah. It is a valid and essential concept, by the way. So then the Prophet ﷺ said to her, أتؤدين زكاتهن, are you paying, because she had like more than one, so that's why the plural is being used. Are you paying the zakat on them? And she said, no. And then the Prophet ﷺ said to her, فهو حسبك من النار. Then this is, the fact that you're not paying zakat on them, this is enough to earn you punishment in the hellfire. Enough to earn you punishment in the hellfire. It's extremely powerful. This is reported by Abu Dawood. It is extremely powerful. So how could the Jumhur in this case argue against like an extremely powerful statement of this nature? Well, they base their argument on, the fact that this report is controversial. Some of the scholars of hadith, many of the scholars of hadith said that the report is not traceable to the Prophet ﷺ, it's not an authentic report. Some of the scholars of hadith found it corroborated by other reports and felt that it would be at least hasan, it would be at least acceptable, at least a sort of admissible proof in Sharia, according to our Rasul. Now, then the Jumhur said, well, okay, if we agree that these reports corroborate one another, then the Prophet may have wanted to discourage extravagance, because in these reports there's always the mention of big and fat stuff, big and fat bracelets, big and fat rings, and that is why the Prophet ﷺ wanted, that is why the Prophet talked about zakah and talked about, tried to discourage this attitude, because there is always the mention of big and fat. So maybe the Prophet did not mean to say that the zakat is obligatory necessarily, but he meant to discourage them from extravagance. That this is beyond this is beyond reason, beyond moderation in zina. If you want to adorn yourself, just do something that's a little bit more moderate. Difficult, isn't it? Because really, if you want to be textualist, and you would have expected the Hanbalis to be here, like taking the Hanafi seat, but it is completely different here. So, but if you want to be textualist, then you want to side with Imam Abu Hanifa on this issue, and the Zahiris as well. That's why the Zahiris sided with the Imam Abu Hanifa. If you feel that these reports corroborate one another, and according to some of the scholars of Hadith, these reports do corroborate one another, and it will be hard to dismiss them once you feel that these reports are established to the, traceable to the Prophet ﷺ. It will be hard to use the argument of the Jumhur, the argument of the Maliki, Shafi'is, and Hanbalis to dismiss them as basically the Prophet discouraging extravagance. Because he's saying, "Atu'addina zakatahu," you are paying zakat on them. So he's clearly explicitly mentioning zakat here. It will be hard. Therefore, if you want to be on the safe side, particularly if your niyyah is not really, if you're not quite sure about the purpose of your ownership of this gold and silver, then you want to pay the zakat. It's closer to piety to pay the zakat on gold and silver jewelry, particularly if you have a large amount. If, like, a woman, for instance, buys them and she says to herself, "I'll wear them, and if any need arises, I'll sell them," stuff like this. So it's not purely for personal use, but there is also some other sort of intent here. But if you have the Jumhur, to be fair to the Jumhur as well, I wanted to mention to you that Imam Ahmad said, we've heard from 5 Sahaba without any contestants that gold and silver jewelry are not zakatable. He mentioned Anas, he mentioned Aisha, he mentioned Ibn Umar, he mentioned Ibn Abbas, he mentioned Jabir. So he said we heard from 5 Sahaba that go. Aisha and Ibn Umar themselves, they used to have some dependents that had gold and silver jewelry, and they did not pay zakat on it. So it's really difficult. It's really difficult. But I would say that, and this is completely acceptable, and we can talk about it some other time. We can give it a whole lecture where you create different scenarios and you take the position of Imam Abu Hanifa in one scenario and the position of Imam Malik in a different scenario, or this or that. But you could say that there could be different scenarios here. Like if you have like an orphan who has like some gold and silver, like a little girl who is an orphan and she has gold and silver, you don't necessarily need to pay zakat on this. But Imam Abu Hanifa here would say you don't pay zakat because they're little. But if you are Maliki or Shafi'i or Hanbali, you will not pay zakat because it's jewelry, and Imam Abu Hanifa will tell you do not pay zakat because they're little, they're not adults yet. So don't go don't be too strict and try to patch up a position that will make you pay the zakat on this gold and silver, even if they were adults. Even if you have like a 15-year-old who has some gold and silver and she has like 100 grams of gold and silver that her mother had left for her, you probably do not want to tell her you need to pay the zakat on this. But if you have an affluent woman, for instance, who buys a lot of gold and sort of hoards it, and she uses the gold every once in a while, if she believes that she does need to do that for her husband, then you would tell her that it is certainly closer to piety for you to pay the zakat on this gold, because this is a very contentious issue, and it is the disagreement here is very hard to decide who's the winner in this disagreement. Is that clear, sisters? Do you particularly have any? Because these guys, they never have that much silver anyway. It's 595 grams. Yes?
I have some opinion that for jewelry, you have to pay zakat at least when
No, that will apply to treasure troves that come out of the land and stuff like this. But no, you either pay them every year, that's the Hanafi and Zahiri position, or not pay them at all, that's the Maliki, Shafi'i, and Hanbali position. Once you have changed your niyyah, like you used to have gold or silver for jewelry, and you changed your niyyah and you intend to sell them, then certainly here, according to all of them, you will need to pay the zakat on this gold and silver.
On what are you selling, or what?
Whatever you intend to sell, you will have to pay zakat from now on any gold and silver that you intend to sell.
If it reached the nisab, or
If it reaches the nisab, if it and the rest of your cash and silver all reach the nisab combined, after they get added together, then you will need to pay the zakat on this. Certainly here, we said adding is controversial if you need to add them. But if you don't take that position and you say that they are separate, gold is separate from silver, then yes, if it reaches the nisab. So this is clear, right? Okay. Then the Shaykh said, وَيُبَاحُ لِلنِّسَاءِ كُلُّ مَا جَرَتْ عَادَتُهُنَّ بِلُبْسِهِ مِنَ الذَّهَبِ وَالْفِضَّةِ وَيُبَاحُ لِلرِّجَالِ مِنَ الْفِضَّةِ الْخَاتَمُ وَحِلْيَةُ السَّيْفِ وَالْمِنْطَقَةِ ونحوها فأما المعد للكراء والادخار أو المحرم ففيه الزكاة. All kinds of gold and silver that are customarily worn by women are permissible for them, and the permissible silver items for men are rings, the ornamentation of swords and belts, and so on. There is zakat on what gold and silver is. There is zakat on whichever gold and silver that's prepared for renting and saving, as well as on the prohibited kinds or the prohibited items of gold and silver. We said if it is prohibited, it's not then it is not usable by the Sharia. The Sharia told you it's not usable. That is gold and silver utensils, and that is gold for men. Then it is prohibited. The silver that is allowed for men is like a ring and the ornamentation of the swords and ornamentation of belts and stuff like this. These would be allowable for men. Otherwise, it would not be allowable. So, but anything that is for rent, gold and silver that are for rent, you may say, what about apartments for rent? No, gold and silver they are zakatable by default. And if gold and silver are not for your personal use, they will be zakatable. Apartments for rent are different from gold and silver for rent. Gold and silver for rent means that it is not for personal use. The only exception for gold and silver is that, according to Imam Malik and Shafi'i and Ahmad, not according to Imam Abu Hanifa, for him any gold and silver is zakatable, but the only exception is that they would be for personal use. But once you have gold and silver for rent, they used to do this. If you guys are surprised, they used to rent out gold and silver jewelry because people did not, for weddings and stuff like this. So if they are for rent, for saving, or if they are not halal to use, then they are zakatable. Okay, so that's that. Then the zakat on debts. Imam ibn Qudamah rahimahullah here said, ومن كان له دين على مليء أو مال يمكن خلاصه كالمجحود الذي له به بينة والمغصوب الذي يتمكن من أخذه فعليه زكاته إذا قبضه لما مضى. Which means, and this is for creditors now, he will talk first about creditors. If you are the loaner, if you are the lender, not the borrower, if you are the lender, not the borrower, this belongs to you, this pertains to you. He says, whoever is owed a debt by a debtor who is capable of paying or has money he is capable of collecting, as when someone denies having borrowed it, but he has proof, or has had something taken by force from him, yet he's capable of taking it back. He must pay zakat for it when he finally takes possession of it, collects it, he should do so for all the years that have passed. Okay. So when someone owes you money, this could be either a good debt or a bad debt, right? You know, what is a bad debt? A bad debt is not recoverable. Not recoverable. So you don't really think that you'll get this money ever back. A good debt is recoverable. You think that you'll get this money back. So what is the story with bad debt versus the good debt? So here Imam al-Qudamah is talking about the good debt. The good debt, or if someone took money from you but you have a proof. Someone is denying that they ever took the money but you have a proof. You could collect the money. You could take them to court and collect the money. Or someone seized it by force but he can grab it, snatch it back from them. Something. You know, you have the power to collect the money. In all of these cases, so it's a good debt. You have given a debt to a solvent, not insolvent, a solvent debtor, and he's not denying, or he's denying, but you have a proof and you can collect the money. All of this will be considered good debt. So what do you do with a good debt? The scholars disagreed. Here, Imam Ahmad and Imam Abu Hanifa agreed on on good debt, the Imam Ahmad agreed with Imam Abu Hanifa. Imam Malik has a different position, and Imam Shafi'i has a different position. So Imam Abu Hanifa and Imam Ahmad, they said, once you've collected this money, you pay it for all the years that have passed. Imam Malik, he said, if this money is not a debt that was accrued through trade, you know, so it's not like a deferred payments. If it's deferred payments, you'll pay it every year. But if it is basically a debt that someone borrowed money from you, this was not in exchange for trade goods. This is not deferred payments. This is someone borrowed money from you for any other purpose, not in exchange for trade goods. Is that clear? Okay. If it is, then you pay the zakat only when the money returns to you for 1 year. Only for 1 year. Even if the person borrowed the money for 20 years, when the money comes back to you, you pay the zakat for 1 year, according to Imam Malik. If it was not in exchange for trade goods. Here you will pay it for all years, according to Imam Abu Hanifa and Ahmad, once you collect it. Once you collect it. So what's different about Imam Shafi'i? You have to pay it every year. Yes, you're paying it every year, annually. Paying it every year. And why is this? This might sound to you a little bit too strict. Why are they doing this? They're saying this is money here, you know, because they're trying to also, they're thinking not only like muftis, but they're also thinking like judges. And they're not thinking also only for the individual welfare or your own religiosity, but they're thinking for the communal welfare. I have money here. This person says that I borrowed it, so I don't need to pay zakat on it. And the other, you go to the person who lent it to him and he said, I don't have it, he borrowed it, I don't need to pay zakat on it. So it's like, you know, so no, or he's not gonna let you do that. So there is some entitlement here. The poor are entitled to this money. Certainly, we will agree with them if this was a trick. But what if it was not a trick? Really, the person borrowed money for their needs, and the lender gave him the money because they needed the money. And this is the sort of the most common scenario here. Someone borrowed money for their needs. We will come back and talk about investment loans or investment debts. Debts that are accrued, or let us get this out of the way first so that you will have a better understanding of the rest of this discussion. This is the concern that they're showing here, that when it comes to debts. They're showing the concern that this is money that is not zakatable. Someone is telling me I'm the borrower, someone is telling me I'm the lender, and I have money here that is not zakatable. The poor are entitled to this money. We will say the scholars in the different majam' al-fiqhiyya, they address the issue of investment debts. Debts for investment versus debts for consumption. Istihlak or istithmar. So, الديون الاستهلاكية, debts for consumption, is when you borrow money from me because you need to pay the tuition for your son's college, or that is a debt for consumption. Debt for investment is when you borrow money because you want to buy this house. So you go to like an Islamic financing institution and you tell them, I want to buy this house, give me $500,000. And then this would be debt for investment. As long as this house is existent and it did not vanish, or as long as the machines that you bought for your factory, let's say you go to a company and you tell them, I have this factory, I want you to finance, I want to upgrade my factory, I want to buy this new technology or those new machines, and I want you to finance this. And you figure out like a shara'i halal way of financing, and then you take the money. You're indebted now by $20 million. And you don't pay the zakat on your factory, right? Do you pay zakat on the factory? No, you don't pay zakat on the factory. How much money do you have in the bank? You have $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, $4 million. You will not pay zakat. In this way, most of the businessmen in our times, most of the Muslim businessmen will not need to pay zakat. Would the fuqaha allow this? Here, no. There's so much money here, and everybody is saying, like you borrowed this money to buy this house, and now you're telling me I have, not only most businessmen, most of the people who have mortgages, if you have a halal mortgage for $500,000, $400,000, $300,000, how many people have actually in their bank account or saving accounts, halal saving accounts and stuff, how many people have more than this? Very rarely that you would come across someone who would have more than this. Therefore, there would be no more zakat. It's done. No more zakat for Muslimin. So the scholars would not allow this. And that is when the scholars use istihsan and they use reason. And then they would make the distinction between the debts that were incurred for investment versus debts that were incurred for consumption. And they will say debts that were incurred for investment, as long as you have the property for which you incurred that debt, you do not subtract that debt from your assets. You only subtract the annual installment. You only subtract the annual installment because this this will have to come out. Zakat is an annual function, and this money will have to come out from your assets on annual basis. So you only subtract the annual. So if your mortgage is $500,000, but your annual you pay annually $20,000, you're subtracting $20,000 from your assets, not $500,000. If you bought machines for your factory for $20 million and your yearly installment is $500,000, you're subtracting $500,000 from your assets, not the $20 million. Is that clear? Let's get this out of the way. Investment debts, let's get them out of the way. We're now talking about consumption debts. And if we're talking about consumption debts, then I forgot to tell you that outside of the four madhab, there is one very little nice madhab that, that doesn't require you to pay zakat even for 1 year. When you collect the money back, they'll tell you when you collect, and this is like a minor report in the Hanbali madhab. So a small a. But this has been reported from Aisha and Ikrimah and a couple other Sahabas had reported this, and it's the position of Ata also from the Tabi'een. So it is not the authorized view of any one of the four major mazahib. That's why we have, we said that positions outside of the authorized views of the four mazahib have to be adopted with caution. And so this requires, it's a process. It's not we don't say no to this, like an absolutist no. But again, at the same time, we say adoption with caution. Adoption with deliberation and caution. And the people who would adopt those positions have to be mujtahideen themselves to adopt those positions and mainstream them. And there is a process for mainstreaming them that we have addressed or discussed before. Therefore, although this position seems to be very strong, that you don't, why is it strong? Because this money, we said one of the shurut of the money being zakatable is what? An-nama, right? Growth. It's money that is growing. It is money that I have control. It is growth or the potency of growth. Did we say that? Growth means cattle, livestock. They grow. They reproduce. Crops, they grow. Physically, grow. But currency does not, if you leave, gold or silver or cash somewhere, it doesn't grow. But why is it zakatable? Because it has the potency of growth. So if you want to grow it, you can. It has the potency, the potential of growth. You can't actualize that potential by investing. And if you don't invest, it's your fault. But we will still take the zakat from you if you don't invest it. So growth or the potential of growth or the potency of growth. Can we apply this? Can we say that this money, I lent you money. You needed the money. And it is a charitable deed. It is almost like charity. That's why the Prophet ﷺ said, قَرْضُ دِينَارَيْنِ كَصَدَقَةِ دِينَار. It has been reported that he said, قَرْضُ دِينَارَيْنِ كَصَدَقَةِ دِينَار. Lending 2 dinars is like giving one away in charity. Lending 2 dinars is like giving. And if you think about it, most of the time when you lend people money, it's easier to give charity because you will not have the anguish of whether they will give it back to you or they'll return it to you or not. So it's easier to just give it in charity. So the Prophet said lending, because if you are a frequent lender, maybe you will recoup like 50% of the loans that you give out. So truly, قَرْضُ دِينَارَيْنِ كَصَدَقَةِ دِينَار. Lending 2 dinars is like giving one away in charity. In this case, should I tell this person that lend the money to his brother or his sister or her sister or her brother, etc.? Should I say to this person that you give them the money, you wait for 5 or 6 years for your money to return, but you'll have to pay every year, like Imam Shafi'i said, until you get the money? It's like almost a punishment for the poor person. No, I'm not saying this because I'm not in a position to disagree with Imam Shafi'i whatsoever. We're not the dust in his sandals. But I'm just saying that this position, not Imam Shafi'i's position, not ascribing it to Imam Shafi'i, but this position seems to be a little bit punitive to the creditor. Imam Abu Hanifa and Imam Ahmad, their position is a little bit more moderate. They say when you collect it, give for all the years, that have elapsed. So after 7 or 8 years, when you collect the money, you will have to give for all the years, not just. Imam Malik's position is really nice. Because you collect the money, it had been 5 years, 6 years, 14 years. You did not have control over this money. It was not growing for you, and there was no potency of growth. You could not have actualized the potential of the money because you did not have the money to begin with. Now, if you're doing this as a trick among yourselves to evade zakat, that's your problem. Then all of this does not apply to you. Then you're deep in trouble with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All of this stuff does not apply. You're crooks, you're deep in trouble. But we're talking about people here that are honest people, you know. So is that clear? Clear. Now let us talk about bad debts. Imam ibn Qudamah rahimahullah.
Can you please this ambiguation? Imam Shafi and Hanifa make distinction between exchange of money, debt, as of exchange of goods, or
No, they don't make that distinction. That's only Imam Malik. Okay. So here, bad debts. الإمام ابن قدامة رحمه الله said, وإن كان متعذرا كالدين على المفلس أو على جاحد ولا بينة له به والمغصوب والضال الذي لا يرجى وجوده فلا زكاة فيه. If someone owns money that is impossible to retrieve because, for instance, the debtor has gone bankrupt, or he denies the debt and there is no proof of it, or someone has had something taken from him by force, or has lost something and there is no hope of finding it, then there is no zakat due on it. Now the bad debt. We discussed the good debt before. The bad debt. The bad debt is a little bit different. The bad debt, Imam Shafi'i and Imam, but keep in mind that this position that Imam Ibn Qudamah chooses here in al-Umdat is not the authorized Hanbali position. The authorized Hanbali position here is like the Shafi'i position. They said for bad debts, you pay once you've collected. Imam Shafi'i changed his mind here from paying on yearly basis because this is a bad debt. He said you pay once you have collected the money for all the years that have passed. For all the years. All the years. Once collected. So Imam Abu Hanifa, what did he say? No zakat here. And this is also a minor position in the Hanbali madhab that Imam Ibn Qudamah chose in this book. Imam Ibn Qudamah, weighed in on the side of this position. No zakat. No zakat.
No zakat even if collected?
When you collect it, you wait 1 year after you collect it and you pay zakat then. But no zakat for that entire period of time that the money has been. Yeah, we'll come to the, yeah. So, no zakat here. Then, what did Imam Malik say? He held on to his position, the same position. You pay the zakat for 1 year once you've collected it. For those who are studying for the purpose of knowledge, try to remember that whole thing. For those who want the Hanbali position on both ends is you pay the zakat for the once collected, you pay the zakat for all years. For those who want sort of the nicest position, you remember Imam Malik's position? Once you have collected the money, regardless of how many years the money has been out, you pay the zakat for 1 year. Is that clear? Okay. Then, so that's Imam Malik's position. Then the Sheikh talks now about the sadaq, the mahr, translated sometimes as dowry, or better translated as bridal gift, bridal gift. وحكم الصداق حكم الدين. He says the ruling of the bridal gift is the same as that of debt. وحكم الصداق حكم الدين. The ruling of the bridal gift is the same as the one as debt. So in the Hanbali madhab, what if he tells her, your mahr is $5,000, and he gives her $2,000, and he tells her $3,000 is deferred. $3,000 is deferred. In the Hanbali madhab, she will have to pay money on this once she collects the $3,000 for all the years. So after 30 years, she'll probably get nothing out of it. Because it is just like debt. It's just like a debt. But Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah was asked about this, and he said the scholars disagreed, but he said that the strongest positions are two positions. Position of Imam Abu Hanifa that she does not have to pay money on it at all. Keep in mind, when we're talking about sadaq, we're talking about three different types here. We're talking about money that she received, the money that has been collected. We're talking about money that is due, not collected. And we're talking about a deferred amount, which is mu'akhar al-sadaq, deferred amount. Collected, no problems here. She collected it. She will pay the zakat. All right? Even before the consummation of marriage. Because before the consummation of marriage, there is that caveat that if the marriage did not get consummated, she'll have to return half of it. But even though you may say that this is not mustaqir, it's milk not mustaqir, it is not completely established, it is not final ownership because she is liable to give back half of it, but this is disregarded here, and from the time of the contract, she is liable to pay the zakat on this money that she has collected even before consummation. So that's money that was collected. Money that is due but not collected, this gets treated like a debt. This gets treated like a debt. And we've gone over the ruling of debts. If her husband is delinquent, then it's a bad debt. If her husband is a good man, a good, honest man, and solvent also, it is a good debt. She will treat it like a debt, and she will go back and figure out how she will treat it. We're talking about money that is the mu'akhar, that is deferred. So we said in the Hanbali madhab, she will pay for all the years when she collects it, but Imam Taymiyyah found this position to be a little bit too sort of harsh on the woman. And he said that the stronger positions are two. Imam Abu Hanifa's position that she will not pay until she collects it and 1 year passes, so she will not pay zakat for that entire period that she did not have that she did not possess the mu'akhar or the deferred dowry, or Imam Malik's position that she will pay it for 1 year, once she collects it, regardless of the duration. And Imam Abu Hanifa's and Imam Malik's position in this regard seems to be more equitable, honestly, because how many women do not get their deferred and if she gets it after like 25 years and you tell her you have to pay the zakat for the 25 years. And the way the question was first posed to Imam Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he was told about a woman who was afraid of demanding her mu'akhar from her husband lest he would divorce her if she asks for it. And she was afraid, and then after so many years she collected it. What does she do now? What is binding on her now? And then he gave them the fatwa. and he would usually venture out of the Hanbali madhab if he found the need for it. So he gave them the fatwa to take either Imam Abu Hanifa's position or Imam Malik's position in this regard. Either take the money and then count 1 year and then pay the zakat, or take the money and immediately pay the zakat for only 1 year, regardless of how many years have elapsed since the contract. Then finally, the Shaykh said, وَمَنْ كَانَ عَلَيْهِ دَيْنٌ يَسْتَغْرِقُ النِّصَابِ الَّذِي مَعَهُ أَوْ يُنْقِصُهُ فَلَا زَكَاةَ عَلَيْهِ فِيهِ. So this is for debtors now. Whoever has a debt that is equal to or greater than the nisab he owns, or the debt makes the money he owns less than nisab, there is no zakah on the money he possesses. Simply, you do have the nisab, you do have $5,000. You have $5,000 in your account, which is more than the nisab, but you owe $7,000. Your annual mortgage is $7,000. For instance, your annual halal mortgage is $7,000. You have $5,000 in your bank account. Do you have to pay zakat? No, you don't have to pay zakat. You don't have to pay zakat by agreement, because this is, what if it is manifest wealth, mal al-zahir? And mal al-zahir is an issue of disagreement. Manifest wealth applies to livestock and crops. Why did they disagree on this? They said that these assets are basically observable by the public. The public are seeing that you have like 400 cows and 1,200 sheep, and you come and you at the end of the year and you don't pay the zakat on any of this. This will harm your reputation and all of that stuff. Then zakah is binding. Some said, Hanbalis said no, it's still not binding. So whether the mal is zahir or not zahir, according to the Hanbalis, you will subtract the debts from anything. There is only one exception, treasure troves. You don't subtract your debt from treasure troves, because the treasure troves, you pay 20% on the treasure troves once they come out, regardless, even if you are indebted. Aside from this, in the Hanbali madhab, you do subtract your debts from your assets, and if the balance at the end of the year, the balance is negative, you don't have to pay the zakat. What if you have $5,000 in your bank account and you have a $3,000 debt? How much money do you have? $2,000. Do you have to pay zakat? No, you don't have to pay zakat, because $2,000 is less than the nisab. Then you don't have to pay zakat. Is that clear? What about investment debts? We're done with that. We're talking about consumption debts here. Investment debts, we are done with that. We said if you have $100,000 in your bank account and you have $300,000 mortgage, and your annual is $20,000. $20,000 is the annual installment is $20,000. If you subtract the $300,000 from the $100,000, no one would be paying zakat ever. So you will not subtract the $300,000. You'll only subtract, because this is an investment, not a consumption. So for investment, not for consumption. You will only subtract the $20,000. So you subtract $20,000, and then you have $80,000. You pay zakat on $80,000. You pay zakat on $80,000. And that would be it. قولوا قولي هذا استغفر الله لي ولكم سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت استغفرك وأتوب إليك.